Today we're going to talk about questions, negatives, and the verb estar. First of all, how do you form a question? There could be questions that are yes or no questions, like do you speak English, or questions that ask for specific information, such as where do you live? In Spanish, there are three ways to form a question. So if we want to know, does Miguel speak English? The first way we could ask that is we could repeat the statement, but raise our voice at the end of the sentence. So if the phrase is Miguel habla inglés, in order to ask that as a question, you would simply say, Miguel habla inglés? The second way to ask a question is to invert the subject and the verb. So if the phrase is Miguel habla inglés, the question would be, ¿Habla Miguel inglés? And again, you would raise your voice at the end of the sentence so that the person listening to you would know that you're asking a question. The third way would be to simply repeat the statement followed by a tag. So the statement again is Miguel habla inglés. A tag is something that you just have to memorize a couple different tags. In English, we actually have several tags that are much more complicated than the tags in Spanish. The tags in Spanish that we're going to learn today are verdad, which means is that the truth? No, or no es cierto, is that not true? So you would just have to memorize these tags. Some examples of tags in English would be aren't you? Isn't he? Didn't you? Doesn't she? Right? So we have a ton of different tags in English that make sense to you, but they would be tricky for someone learning English. So in Spanish, we're just going to focus on these few tags. ¿Verdad? No. ¿No es cierto? Those are the three ways that you could form a question in Spanish. Here are some words that you'd like to know for forming questions. So interrogative words. ¿Qué? ¿Quién? ¿Quiénes? ¿Cuál? ¿Cuáles? ¿Cuándo? ¿Cuánto? ¿Cuánta? ¿Cuántos? ¿Cuántas? ¿Dónde? ¿Cómo? ¿Por qué? So something to note on here, for quién and cuál, as you can see, there's a singular version and a plural version. So you can use a singular or a plural depending on which phrase you're using. Another thing to note is for the word cuánto, you would have to think about gender as well as singular versus plural because there are 4 different forms to ask it. So for how much or how many, you would have to look at what you're talking about and try and match it up and make it agree. Something else important. So many of you probably already know the word qué, which means what in Spanish. However, if you didn't hear someone correctly or you don't understand and you want to say what, it's much more polite to use the word como. So if you didn't hear something again or you want to have someone repeat it or explain it more, it's much more polite to say como. They would understand you if you said que, but if you want to speak a little bit more formally and more polite, you would say como. All right, how do we form negatives in Spanish? This one is really simple. All you have to do is insert the word no right in front of the verb. So, no quiero pizza means I do not want pizza. No habla inglés, he or she does not speak English. No hay nadie en la cafetería, there is no one in the cafeteria. Here are some more negative words. No, ya no, nunca, nadie, nada, para nada, ni siquiera. You're going to use these a lot, so it's really important for you to memorize them. Double negatives. I'm sure you all remember your English teachers growing up telling you that you absolutely cannot use double negatives. In Spanish, double negatives are okay. So you can forget everything you learned about double negatives, and in Spanish, it's actually encouraged to use double negatives. So here's an example of actually a triple negative that is totally fine in Spanish. Nadie nunca comprende nada. No one never understands nothing. It sounds pretty silly to us in English because we were always taught not to use anything more than one negative word in each sentence. But in Spanish, you can use all the negative words that you would like and it makes sense. And that's the way that you would say, no one understands anything. All right, switching gears here, we're going to go over an irregular verb, which means it has forms that do not follow the regular verb patterns that we learned in a previous class. So this verb is very important. It means to be. As we talked about before, there are two different verbs in Spanish that mean to be, ser or estar. Estar has many different uses. We are going to focus just on two of its uses today, either current condition or to designate a location. So let's go over some of these irregular forms of estar. Yo estoy, tú estás, usted, él, ella está, nosotros estamos, ustedes, ellos, ellas están. As you can see, although this is an AR verb, it does not follow the typical AR pattern. So you have to memorize the forms of estar. You will use estar in many situations in Spanish, so please, please, please go over this verb chart and have it memorized. Estoy, estás, está, estamos, están. All right, using estar for to be in the current condition. So if someone says, hola mamá, ¿cómo estás? They're asking how they are. What is their current condition? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they depressed? An answer to that might be, aquí las cosas no están muy bien. Here the things are not going very well. That's your current condition. Here are some vocab that you might need to talk about current conditions. Bien, contento, contenta, cansado, cansada, preocupado, preocupada, de mal humor, mal, triste, más o menos, de buen humor, así, así. Just a couple notes here. As you can see, where there's more than one vocab word in the line, like contento, contenta, or cansado, cansada, preocupado, preocupada, that means that you have to think about whether you're talking about a male or a female. So for males, we would use the O at the end, and for female or feminine nouns, you would use the A at the end for those examples. Another thing, I have a C in italics here. I personally do not recommend using a C, but I've included it here because every Spanish textbook I've ever seen has it. But to be completely honest, in all the years I've spoken Spanish with people from all over the place, I have never once heard anyone use this phrase. So you can learn it just because it's in all the Spanish textbooks, but I don't think you will ever need it in real life, but you could prove me wrong. All right, using estar to describe location. Mis amigos están en Tonalá. Where are my friends? My friends are in Tonalá. Su hijo Miguel está en los Estados Unidos. Where is her son Miguel? He is located in the United States. So in order to talk about location, you're going to need to learn some prepositions. So a preposition is any word that describes the relationship or the relation between one part of a sentence and another. Those connecting words that we use. Here's a list of some connecting words, some prepositions. En, con, sobre, encima de, debajo de, bajo, al lado de, cerca de, lejos de, dentro de, entre, a la derecha de, a la izquierda de, delante de, enfrente de, detrás de. So you'll probably need to use these when you start forming dialogues, so just take a look at this chart. You can also refer to it on page 65 of your textbook.